Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Barbara Bailey. I'm from the 10th Legislative District, and here with me today is Senator Braun from the 20th Legislative District. We will be introducing a plan for reducing college tuition and actually making college more affordable for our students. Many of our students are behind me here. And they'll have a short comment after we finish explaining the bill. So with that, I'm going to make some remarks, and then my colleague, Senator Braun, will make some remarks also. And first, let me just kind of frame the situation. As most of you know, this is something I've talked about ever since I've been involved with higher education for the last 2 years, and now going into the third year. And it's always been a concern of mine simply because I've put 4 children through college, and I can tell you the pain is pretty great in trying to do that from an affordability standpoint. So let me just say this. Right now, our college tuition rates rank 16th highest in the nation. As recently as 2002, a person would graduate from University of Washington or WSU and paying less than $4,000 a year in tuition. A decade later, the price has nearly tripled. Although per pupil funding has stayed consistent, adjusted for inflation, however, the cost of attending college has been borne by the middle-class families in this state and the students in the form of higher tuition as state support has declined. Students and families are facing a crisis. Nationally, student debt is over $1 trillion. That should trouble everyone. Despite having one of the most generous financial aid programs in the country, over 50% of Washington's students graduate with debt. Despite having one of the most generous financial aid programs, we still graduate with debt. I said that a second time for a reason. It's very troubling. Washington College students graduate with an average of about $24,000 in debt, creating a ripple effect in the economy, forcing students to delay major life purchases and starting their life and contributing back to the economy. This is very troubling. So, we're introducing the College Affordability Program. With that, I'm going to let my colleague explain some of the details on the program, and then we'll open it up for questions. Senator Braun.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for being here. So I have the great pleasure of introducing what we're calling the College Affordability Program. That's CAP, for those of you who like acronyms. So what CAP does is it sets a cap on tuition at all our state universities and community colleges as a percentage of average state wage. So details for our research universities, University of Washington and Washington State University, the cap would be 14% of the average state wage. For our regional universities, the cap would be 10% of the average state wage. And for the community colleges, the cap would be 6% of the average state wage. So what that does is that sends a significant reduction or reset in tuition. At the research universities, that would be about a 30% reduction. At the regional universities, that'd be about a 20 to 25% reduction. And actually, the community colleges are under that cap. They're right at that cap right now. So a big reset after years of significant increases in tuition. We have a big reset, put us back on the track to affordability. And then in the future, that would allow for growth in tuition, but only as the average state wage grows. So we really want to have a policy that long-term ties tuition and affordability of college to the wages we see in our state. What better metric to use than average state wage? So what other things does it do? First of all, the strength of this program is we're not asking the universities to absorb this cost. We're saying we need to make a state investment. We need to keep the universities whole, so every dollar they lose in tuition under this program, we would fill with state dollars. And to kind of put that in perspective, what does it cost to do that? It's a simple number. It costs $223 million to fill that up. That means it's $349 million to replace tuition, plus you see some savings. If you have a significant reduction in tuition, you see some savings in the need grant, so the net is $226 million. So just to kind of frame that number, we're working on a biennial budget in the coming biennium of in the neighborhood of $37 billion. Now, $226 million is a big number, but it's only a little over 0.5% of the budget we're working on for the coming biennium. So is this hard to do? Yes, but is it doable in the structure of that bigger budget? I would submit that yes, it is, that we can do this. We have a lot of tough budget discussions ahead of us, but this should be among our priorities. We have to set college tuition and affordability of access to college as one of our priorities as we build the budget for the coming biennium. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our students to speak about this program.
Thank you, Senator Braun and Senator Bailey. My name is Austin Wright Pettibone. I direct the Office of Government Relations for the Associated Students at the University of Washington. And on behalf of the students of UW and all those across the state, I'd like to thank both Senators Braun and Bailey for introducing this legislation, along with all the co-sponsors of this bill. We welcome this bill as a major step forward in restoring our investment in higher education and reaffirming our commitment to providing students with an affordable college degree. We thank you for your push to lower tuition, and we look forward to working with you and other members to ensure that this works right for students and their families, for our universities, and for our state. As students, we've grown up hearing that our parents' generation could work their way through school. This reality, as we well know, no longer exists. Over the last 10 years, state investment in higher education has shrunk by over 50%, while tuition has more than doubled to compensate for decreased state investment. Our universities have suffered, and families have paid the price. More students are taking on more debt and working more hours to pay for school. This proposal is an attempt to bring the public back into our public universities. ASUW has long held that the best form of financial aid is low tuition, because we know that high tuition isn't just bad for students, it's a bad policy for our state. I'd like to thank the sponsors of this bill for recognizing this and for taking the time to right the ship when it comes to tuition policy in Washington state. Conversations like this will help students and families across the state access higher education. We believe this will send a powerful message to current and prospective students that Washington is serious about funding higher education and prioritizing college affordability. It says what we all know, that we can fund our universities and prioritize affordability for students. It's a bold step forward and an ambitious policy to consider. And as with all bold policies, we know there's more work to be done, but we welcome these conversations and believe with this legislation as a starting point, we can move forward this legislative session on addressing the balance between access, affordability, and excellence in higher education. Thank you.
Did you have something you want to say? Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Haley Homan, and I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Associated Students of Washington State University. I'd like to begin by thanking the sponsors, Senator Bailey and Senator Braun, as well as all co-sponsors for this bill. The students I represent at WSU are very thankful that action is being taken to help our students in Washington State. The 2000s saw steady decreases of state support for college tuition, with that financial burden being heavily placed on students and their families. The past 2 years of tuition freezes have helped our current and prospective students, but there is still a long way to go to make up for the $1 billion that has been cut from higher education since the recession. We are grateful for the sponsors for working to remedy this past state disinvestment. My freshman year, I experienced a 16% tuition increase. With these increases, I was extremely worried that I would not be able to afford all 4 years at the university that I loved so much. I also have 3 younger brothers and was very concerned that they would not get the chance to go to college and pursue their dreams if tuition costs kept increasing drastically every year. However, freezing tuition does not necessarily make college affordable. While I am extremely thankful for the past 2 years of tuition freezes, I still work 2 jobs on top of a full course load during the school year and full-time during the summer to pay for my education. And even with scholarships, I still am forced to take out student loans. I'm glad to be able to work to pay my way towards achieving my education, but it shouldn't be as hard as it is. Additionally, reducing tuition will not only affect our current students, but our prospective students as well. While I was working at McDonald's, my coworkers actually knew about the tuition freeze before I did, nearly as soon as it happened. None of them were politically involved, but this policy did affect them all. Many of my coworkers had been saving up for years to go to a university, and one had even attended a year at WSU before having to drop out due to high costs. This tuition freeze was a symbol of hope, showing that the state had not abandoned their college-age students. This proposal goes further to ensure that college is accessible for all students who are willing to work hard for their education, and that no matter where they may come from, they are not limited by that, and they can go on to become who they want to be and do what they want to do. Thank you.
Do you see why we're so passionate about this? As far as I'm concerned, this is our future. We want to make sure that we deal with that appropriately, and we make sure that they have every opportunity that they can possibly have to have a great, wonderful, bright future. We have put that in jeopardy in the past, I believe, with a consistent, constant rising of tuition costs, along with other costs associated with going to college. And so tuition is a starting place. I want to make sure that we begin to look even more holistically at all the other things that, and I can see they'll shake their heads behind me with all the student fees, other types of things that are making it extremely costly for students to get their college degree. With that, Senator Braun and I will take some questions. Yes.
I'm from the Associated Press. Where exactly in the time of a year of a budget shortfall are you going to find $226 million?
All right, that's
Go
the
ahead.
million-dollar question. I think that, so I have maintained for some time now that we do have a tough budget in front of us, but we should keep in mind that we had $3 billion more in projected revenue in the coming biennium than we had in the last biennium. You just heard me say that this is a big number, no question about that. But if you put it in context of the whole budget, I think this is manageable. This is simply about setting priorities, and I think we're here today to say lowering tuition ought to be a high priority. So do I think we can do it? Yeah, I think that, again, you can't simplify a $37 billion budget, but this is a small number in the bigger context, and I think there's a way to get there. Clearly, we have other things on our plate. We have higher ed, we have mental health, we have a lot of things that are going to be important, but and our submission here is this is just as important and should be at the table as we make those decisions.
Have you spoken to your colleagues in the House about this?
This is a relatively new proposal. We have talked to some of them about this proposal, about the general idea, but the details were really just released yesterday and today.
I think it's also important to think long-term about this. When you begin to look at getting out of school without debt, if that's possible to do, it will immediately begin to put money back into the economy. Right now, the students are so burdened with debt that they're not able to make some of those decisions that they'd like to make as they graduate, either maybe buying a home, a car, starting a family, or maybe just starting life in general. It's very, very difficult, the kind of debt that they are graduating with. You heard the number, the average is almost $25,000. I would propose that probably many students graduate with a lot more debt than that. So as soon as these students can get out, if they don't have debt, they're contributing to the economy. So keep that in mind as we think forward about this. Other questions?
I just make one more follow-up comment. You just put this in perspective. When I entered the University of Washington in the mid-'80s, you could the tuition at University of Washington was less than 8%. It was about 7.5% of the state average wage. Here, several decades later, with significant growth in our state average wage, tuition at the University of Washington is over 22% of the state average wage. That's a over three times increase on top of the growth in the state average wage. That's a big difference. This is an enormous change in direction in policy for the state of Washington to really put front and center the importance of that higher education and what it means to our workforce, to our long-term economy. To follow up on what Senator Bailey said, when you graduate with the type of debt that we're seeing in our state these days, it delays all kinds of decisions, whether it's the job you take, the family decisions, purchase decisions, starting a new business, taking a risky proposition. It makes those choices virtually impossible if you're crushed with a large student debt. This is a policy change, a long-term policy change that ties tuition to the state average wage and ensures it is affordable into the future. And I think that sets bright prospects for our economic future in Washington State.
Any other questions? I think this is a beginning. We are putting this bill forward. I'm hopeful that it will get a hearing. I think we will get a hearing. At the same time, it starts the discussion. And as the student said, it really begins to frame the problem that we have. My concern when I first realized how bad the problem really is was, are we graduating students that actually can afford their student debt once they graduate? The more I looked at that and the more I studied it across not just this state but across the country, I'm concerned that they won't be able to, regardless of the kind of degree that they aspire to. So some of the early look was to try to line up better the degrees with tuition. However, that seemed to not be the right way to go. This proposal, I believe, really does take us in the right direction to make sure that we are in line with the state average wage, and affordability is the key answer to making sure that all of our students have the opportunity and access, financial access, to a college degree. So with that, thank you very much for coming. Any other comments from anyone? I want to thank them. Let's thank them for being here. Thank you very much. Shake hands with our future.